Preservation Committee. My name is Tim Sherritt, Vice Chair. Sitting behind the witness desk is our esteemed Chair, Bill Callahan. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via in-person and via remote means. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandover.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their television by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in the public meeting, please email your questions or comments prior to or during this meeting to CPC emails at northandoverma.gov. The questions or comments will be provided to the committee before and during the meeting or read during the proceedings, if received during or shortly before the meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Callahan.
Okay. Good evening. Through a few unfortunate circumstances tonight, we do not have a quorum. So therefore, and we know that this is our public meeting at which we usually would trying to engage the public. And so what we'll do is we know we have a number of people who are interested in doing projects tonight, and to make good use of their time and to preserve, and the fact that they came out tonight, and to preserve this for members to watch at a future date on tape so they have some information about what's coming up. What I'm going to suggest is anyone who has a proposed project come up, and we'll give them, we'll say like 3 or 4 minutes each to simply describe the project, and then we'll move on. But we can't question or act in any official capacity because we don't have a quorum. I think that is the best we can do tonight in terms of being respectful of everybody's time. So without...
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If there's a question involving clarification, is that okay to ask?
You just can't have any deliberation.
Yeah.
Not a deliberation, just a clarification.
Yeah. It's really just a listening session.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a meeting.
Could we ask a question?
Are you going to start deliberating after you
No, I'm going to ask a question and then
guess
I'll
the point
deliberate
is-
with myself. How's
So I guess
that?
the point is, no official applications have been submitted yet, right?
Right.
So the time for questions, you can, have at a future meeting if you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll listen.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll come up. Why don't we do this? How many potential applicants are there tonight? 1, 2, 3. There's 3. Anybody else? Okay. Could we talk and not deliberate, and just for the other folks who may have a project later, and just say this is the process?
Yeah.
Or not? Okay. So we'll run through the process. We'll hear from people, and we'll go from there. So I have a little overview of the committee and the process. So Community Preservation Committee in North Andover, as John can attest, we were one of the first communities in the Commonwealth to adopt the program. It's been very significant, and this doesn't even include the projects we funded last year, but we funded through town meeting 144 projects, $42 million with $13.5 million in matching grants. So very good, sort of adoption by the town. And then you can see, this doesn't include the projects that were approved last year because they haven't been, completed. But if you look at the appropriations over the years, they've actually balanced out pretty well, with open space being the largest, followed closely by recreation, preservation, and affordable housing. So certainly been, I think, a worthwhile investment of the citizens of North Andover, and we've taken advantage of the state's sponsorship of this program. And the matches, unfortunately are going down over time as more communities adopt. I think I read about some communities that adopted just on Tuesday through vote. Categories of funding, we could talk about a little bit. There are 4: open space, which are purchased to remain undeveloped. And the key point here, if any application, is that it needs to have a conservation restriction. So a conservation restriction has to be documented and held by a third party. A lot of the conservation restrictions in North Andover are held by the Conservation Department, the trustees of reservations, Essex Greenbelt. Also, public access is important, and it's usually in terms of passive recreation. The second is purchase for active use or refurbishment. Rick can talk a little bit about that, but same thing, public access and public benefit. Could certainly give a bunch of examples of those if you want to, Rick.
Yeah, McAvoy Field is one project that was funded through CPA grants. That's one of the larger ones. There's been the Town Farm Athletic Field, which is on Dale Street, a soccer field, a multi-purpose field. There is also funding that's been appropriated towards the redevelopment of the middle school project, which has not occurred yet, but those are quite a few of the large recreation projects. There's obviously been open space projects too as well.
And then all the playgrounds.
All the playgrounds too, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
The third category is historical preservation. And for applicants on that, I would say the first thing is establishing the historical significance. Unfortunately, our member from the Historical Commission is not here tonight, but applicants should start with the Historical Commission in any endeavor that they're going to do and get them to deem that it's of historic value to the town of North Andover. So usually we want a letter from them before we consider an application, unless it's related to a spot that's been sort of well established or is on the National Register of Historic Places. So, and the fourth category is
Bill, just one bit of information is that a lot of the nice features in this room were paid for.
Yeah.
By CPA money, so.
That's true. And certainly a lot of work with the Historical Society and Ridgewood Cemetery as well. And the fourth category is affordable housing. I think the best example of that is the Stevens Corner project that was, over $1 million in CPA funding. And then we do a lot of work with local nonprofits like the Affordable Housing Trust and Bread and Roses to renovate properties. And then I'll quickly run through the process. I think the most important thing to understand about the process is that the Community Preservation Committee doesn't put forward any applications, so we can't. We just hear what citizens have to say, so it's really incumbent upon the citizens or different nonprofits or groups or interested stakeholders in town to put in the applications. Because if it's not in an application, it doesn't get considered. And we've tried to tweak the process over the course of the year because it is complicated. There are a lot of factors to consider. So we've added a notice of intent period, and we have those forms on our website that says if in December 1st of a fiscal year, if you want to make a recommendation, it's very simple. So I would like to do X, with CPC funds. And that allows us to schedule some time for you on our calendar, find a time that works to come in and discuss your project. And the idea is basically for everyone to understand, and we found that to be very useful because we've been able to point people in the right direction in terms of which stakeholders they need to involve and how they might want to go about it. And sometimes what's a suitable bite of a project in a year. So with the boat ramp, I think is a good example. A gentleman came forward and said, I'd like to refurbish the boat ramp. And we said, wow, that's very complicated. It's going to require a lot of planning. So it's been a multi-stage project where they first did a feasibility study, then came back for the engineering, and then they're coming back, they came back finally for the execution. So it'll happen. It takes a while, but, it's worked out really well in the end, and everyone's been, speaking very favorably of it. The second part is the application, which is more formal, a formal proposal with cost estimates and rationale, and that's what we'll review as a committee. Depending upon the project, we might invite people to come talk about their application, or not, depending on how clear it is and maybe consistent with prior asks and so forth. We can still adjust things on the way up into town meeting until we vote on it. So we've definitely had applications that came in with one amount, and it's been adjusted after talking. And then the committee will recommend action on a list of projects around the March-April timeframe. And so what the CPC does is simply recommend favorable action on the expenditures of those funds from our pool of funds. It becomes an article on the town meeting warrant. The planning board, depending upon the project, the select board on all projects, and the finance committee on all projects, because it involves expenditure of funds, all recommend action one way or another, favorable or unfavorable action. And at the end of the day, town meeting is the ultimate arbiter of what gets funded and what doesn't. So that's how the process plays out, and then the funds become available, in the next fiscal year. So usually town meetings in May, the fiscal year starts July 1, and that's when the funds become available. One other part that happens, after approval and before going through is a grant agreement where the town and the entities come into an agreement about what's going to happen. So, for example, we're going to preserve this land, there'll be a restriction upon it, and these are the conditions. And this is how much money you're awarded, and this is the process for disbursement of funds. So any questions on that?
Just a quick question, who can apply?
Pretty much anybody can apply. Like an individual citizen, group of citizens, nonprofit board.
They don't even actually have to be a North Andover resident to apply, because we've had Essex County Greenbelt, sponsor a few projects, so.
Can the town apply to use
Yeah, the town does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The town manager's office often does. Or the conservation committee, or sometimes has. Any questions on that? And I'll turn this over to the rest of the committee largely, but what we find is what makes a successful application, it's when there's a clear public benefit, when there's a wide group of engaged community stakeholders, when it's a clear mission and purpose, and when people start with lots of outreach, I would say early. So, John, if you want to start and maybe add your thoughts a little bit to what you see as, hallmarks of a successful application.
Yeah, I think that I would say two things. I think I'm glad you put public benefit first. That's kind of a truism at one level, but the whole idea of CPA is to do things that will benefit the community for the long term, and there's things that normally aren't covered by the budget. So I think that's where the creativity comes in. It's just a wonderful thing that will make North Andover a great place to live down the road. That's really what we're looking for. It's a spark. It's something specific. You just look at some of the things that we've done, and we've preserved facilities, we've preserved open space, just wonderful things. I think the other thing too, and Bill, I think you alluded to it, is explaining your proposition clearly and completely and having sufficient detail. Ultimately it's, did you do your homework? And is this something that, that clearly make sense and there's no big surprises, you know, because one of the things we don't want to have happen is fund a project and then find out it only covers like 20% of what the total cost would be.
Yes. I agree with John. Public access is very important in the applications. I think we put a strong emphasis on that and what the use will be by the people of North Andover or just neighboring communities. I think also one thing to consider, we've had some issues in the past, is who's going to be the custodian of a piece of property. If it's going to be purchased through CPA, that is very important to know who the custodian is going to be. So it's a great program. I think the town benefits greatly, as well as all of the community members. And we've had, as John alluded to, we've had some successful projects, and we hope to have some this year.
I've been on the committee now for a couple of years, and big thing that I got out of the last 2 years really is how much communication and advanced planning and working with all types of people. If you got a big project, hopefully you've already been working on it and already outreaching to people and just communicating and getting their buy-in, their concerns and their questions answered, because as we approach the end of the calendar year and for sure getting into the application time, it's almost too late on those very big projects. That's what I'm referring to. The smaller ones, you know, the North Andover Trails, great group, and they come for material and they build a bridge over a swampy area, and that's an easy one. But if it's a multi-million-dollar one, hopefully homework has been done.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, when we touch on matters of property, I think one of the big things that we've, you know, come to find out over years is, you know, getting buy-in from abutters early, and kind of making sure you have, you know, local support and local feedback as part of the process is one thing that we've seen that can hold things up.
Yeah, I also think our public outreach and our earlier deadline of these presentations allows applicants more time to make adjustments in their application, so they don't get to that point where we're voting on it and there may be missing information. As Tim said, it's good to get out early on these applications so that they are complete when they come before us for voting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the end of the slide, so I'll come around.
You go.
Are there any questions before we hear from people with, you know, possible projects for next fiscal year? Okay. Ms. Burzloff, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you. Lori Burzloff, I'm the Assistant Town Manager, Director of Operations for the town. I am in here in my official capacity to let you know what the Town Manager's Office is going to request this year. The first one, we have two different things that we're going to be asking. The first one is to build a stage bandstand at the Common. It's a request that we've been trying to work on for a while now, and we have the design, we know how much the design's going to cost, and then a rough estimate of what the actual building of it is, and it was more than we actually had thought, to become handicap accessible, make it bigger, have a roof over it. It's a little shy of $200,000 to do that. So that's the first one. That's one of the things that we would really like to see happen, and we wouldn't be able to put it in the capital plan this year, so that's why we come to you. And then the other thing is the Stevens Estate Stables. The CPC at the town meeting approved $150,000 to try to stabilize that. We so far have had the structural engineers in and the design done. We need to have the hazardous substances removed before anything can be done. So we're working on that. Then we are going to go out to bid to just get the interior structure so that, the floor doesn't collapse. And that's going to use up basically all of the funds from this current year, and also money that we are putting in from the Stevens Estate itself. And so we also, through our whole examination of it, found that most of the masonry has to be repaired because that's where a lot of the water intrusion is coming from. And that is, the rough estimate that we've been given on that is $175,000. So we're looking at a 3-step process. We're hopefully going to do 2 of them this year, and then the masonry is what we would come forward to CPC for. And then hopefully it will be ready to decide how it's going to be used. The thought is probably Mass Audubon and some programming in there with, who knows, perhaps the youth center. But right now, the important thing is to try to get it not to stop the water from coming in and get it stabilized. So that's it.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I think I saw Stan, was that you?
Stan Limpert, 43 Stonecleve Road, President, North Andover Historical Society. We're considering submitting 2 projects for CPA funding. One would be the preservation and restoration of the Hayscales building, the real Hayscales building, the one that's at the corner of the Common at Osgood and Andover Street. We haven't done much with that building in a while, and it really needs some help, as well as the scale itself. There's a sort of the rudiments of what used to be the scale there. We're going to try to use that, incorporate that into a lot of the educational programming we're doing for students, particularly elementary school students, because it really is one link to our agricultural heritage here in North Andover. So it offers us a real opportunity to use it for our educational program. So that's one thing we're considering proposing for CPA funds. The second, which has been mentioned to you in the past, is a project to, if you will, strip the brick building that's part of the Johnson Cottage complex back to its original state, which was red brick. It's not really clear when, in fact, that building was painted, but its original form, when it was constructed, was red brick. And that's sort of the historical view of that building. So we haven't gotten any estimates for what that would cost, and depending on what that is, we may in fact want to propose that for some CPA funding. The building needs work, some paint work and other work anyway, so that would be just an opportunity to do that. And so those would be 2 potential projects we're thinking about submitting.
Okay, thank you. Other potential applicants? Sure, come on.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Harrington. I'm here on behalf of North Parish, where I'm a member, and I'm with Deb Putnam, who is also a member. So we have some structural issues. It's a very old building, 1836, and we've got a lot of spire damage, which is creating like a lot of leaks, which is now sort of seeping into the roof, and so we have a project manager, Gary Martin, from our church, who's been doing a lot of the legwork to help us to understand, what the issues are. So it's there's a lot of preservation work, as you can imagine, on the spires. They're holes, the woodpeckers, all of these things which, you can imagine with an older place. So we have a bid, we have a current bid for about $750,000, which includes, clapboard siding, repairing some of the spires, and doing some, the staging, all of that work that needs to be done. So, and since we got that proposal, we've realized that there's a lot more damage to the spires and to the finials on top. So we got another bid, which is going to add about $125,000 to the 750, which is just it's work that it's so essential. Even just going through the winter, it's really making us nervous. So we've been doing fundraising. We've raised about $300,000 of that, and we're going to keep, trying, but we're, sort of, tapped out with our membership. And this is just this, preservation work, which is just so costly because of the, the historic nature of the building. I think it's that probably the most prominent historic building in North Andover. So we would like to come, and so I should also let you know that, so we're coming in as the 1836 Meeting House, which is a nonprofit. So we're hoping, we'd like to ask for about $500,000 to, to help us get that work done. And as I said, we've got, contractors to do the work. It's, you've got to find specialized people to do this. So we've been doing a lot of that. Gary Martin has done so, and Deb have done so much work already. So we're in, a good position. We're really ready to do the work.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else with a question or potential project? Okay. Well, I don't know if we're not really having a meeting, do we really have to adjourn? But so I'd say we're adjourned. Thank you.